This video is about why buying a house makes no financial sense and why you should probably buy one anyway. My name is Blaze. Let's chat.
Ready, let's go.
Before I say anything further, you should know that I am not a financial advisor. The purpose of this video is strictly for entertainment purposes only, and you should look for financial advice from a certified financial advisor who can assess your specific situation and circumstances. With the way interest rates have been dropping in New Zealand, I'm sure a number of you have been wondering if it is a good time to purchase a house or not. So basically, you are considering the rent or buy decision. This is, of course, a personal decision that you need to consider a number of factors before getting into such a transaction. My wife and I have been considering this for ourselves, and because I'm a bean counter by profession, I ran the numbers. And one thing is abundantly clear: it makes no financial sense. But like any other decision we make, we can't just use quantitative factors to decide. We have to also use qualitative factors. So this is what I'm going to do for you in this video. I'm going to look at 10 reasons why you should not buy a house and 10 reasons why you should buy a house. For us to do this, let us lay down some assumptions about the type of house we are buying. We'll then play around with these assumptions to see if there's a situation that will allow you to buy a house. Firstly, I am making this video from New Zealand, so there are some things that will be relevant to this location that will not apply to other locations. I'll do my best to structure this in a way that you can change variables so it applies to your current location. Secondly, let us assume that the house we're trying to purchase costs 1 million New Zealand dollars. 1 million New Zealand dollars is about 570,000 United States dollars for comparison. Thirdly, let us assume that you'll be purchasing the house using a mortgage. So we need some mortgage variables. We will assume an interest rate of 6%, which is about the interest rate you will get from banks today. Let us also assume that we have a deposit ready of 20%, which will be $200,000. We will also assume that the mortgage will be for the maximum period of 30 years. Let us also assume that we'll be putting aside maintenance costs of 1% of the value of the property per year. Okay, with those variables, you will either be paying $4,797 per month or $2,207 per fortnight. This will purchase you a 3 or 4 bedroom house. So if you're looking for something smaller, you will pay less, or if you're looking for something bigger, you will pay more. Now, let us talk about why this transaction makes no financial sense. Firstly, you will pay less if you're renting. You will almost always pay less to rent a property than to buy that same property. Just looking at the mortgage costs, you'll be paying anything between 10 and 40% less to rent a property than you would to buy that property. This is before you factor in the costs associated with purchasing the property, maintaining that property, and the 20% deposit. If you factor these into the calculation, you can be paying anything between 30% to 70% more to purchase a house. Over a 30-year period, this becomes significant. Using our $1 million house, a renter will pay about $850 per week, will pay a total of $1,326,000 to rent the house. They will also have to pay a deposit of perhaps $3,400, taking their total bill to $1,329,400. The buyer, on the other hand, will have to pay $1,721,460 in mortgage costs, a deposit of $200,000, purchasing costs of about $4,000, and a potential further $300,000 in maintenance costs over the period of the mortgage. This takes the total bill of the buyer to a whopping $2,229,460. This is about 67% more than you would pay to buy the house than to rent the house. I don't know about you, But that makes no financial sense at all. If what you're after is to satisfy the fundamental need of putting a roof over your head, then spending 67% more than you need to seems like a financially illiterate strategy. Let's move on to the second reason. The deposit is a lot. Raising a 20% deposit is a huge ask. If we take the example we started with, you will need to raise $200,000. Research has shown that almost 2/3 of Kiwis, 63%, are struggling to put money aside as savings, with the high cost of living cited as the main barrier. Only 39% of savers are managing to save $100 a month or less. So let us assume that you're being highly disciplined and you're managing to put aside $1,000 per month. At this rate, you will be able to get to the savings goal after, wait for it, 16 years. Using good investment techniques, you can perhaps cut this down to about 12 or 15 years. This is assuming that there are no life emergencies, retrenchments, or unexpected expenses that you will need to cover along the way. I do know that there are some financial institutions that offer a lower deposit option, meaning that you can enter the housing market with as little as 5% deposit now instead of the traditional 20%. This will offer you some relief, but it is important to note that if the deposit is reduced, the installments you'll have to pay will be increased. So, for example, using the $1 million example we started with, the deposit will be reduced from $200,000 down to $50,000, but the installments will be increased from $4,797 per month all the way to $5,696 per month. That's an increase of about $900 or a 19% increase on your monthly mortgage payments. If you do decide to go down this route, you will also need to pay what's called lender's mortgage insurance, or LMI. LMI is not an insurance for you. It's an insurance policy that protects the lender from financial loss in the event that you cannot keep up with the home repayments. It is also sometimes called a low equity premium or a low equity margin. This can range from 0.25% to 1.5% extra per premium that you pay, meaning your monthly premium will be $984 higher per month than before. So over 30 years, you'll be paying an extra $355,000 than you would have paid if you had paid the 20% deposit. Interestingly, that is not necessarily a bad thing if you zoom out for a second. What this essentially means is you have taken a $150,000 loan and repaid it over a period of 30 years with $984 on a monthly basis. This means that you have taken this loan effectively with a 2.94% interest rate, which all things considered is a pretty cheap loan. In fact, I would say if you have $200,000 ready to make a deposit for your first house, you are better off taking that $150,000 and placing it in an investment that yields more than 3% per annum. And you will be better off than using the entire amount as a deposit. But I digress. My point is, raising the deposit is still a stretch. Even if you only have to raise $50,000, as a diligent saver, this will still take you more than 4 years to do. I do know that there are other schemes available to help you raise the deposit faster, like digging into your KiwiSaver funds. I would advise that you have a long chat with your financial advisor before you do this. This is something I personally will not be doing, as I will be taking away from my retirement fund in order to fund a house purchase. In essence, I'm stealing from my future self in order to make a purchase now. But let's move on to the next reason why you probably shouldn't purchase a property: the other costs associated with ownership. As you might have picked up with what I've already said, there are expenses that you have to pay when you own a property that you do not have to deal with when you're renting. These include legal costs, valuation costs, a builder's report, maintenance costs, home insurance, lender's mortgage insurance, renovation costs, and so on. This is over and above the higher mortgage costs that you will need to pay in order to own the property. To rent a property, your costs are limited to your rental charge and at most the deposit you have paid if you have damaged the property you are renting. This means that there's more money that will be leaving your account when you're buying a house than when you're renting. This, as much as it is a horrible thing, is far worse than you think it is. There is this saying that goes, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, meaning it is better to have one bird that you have and control than to have two that you do not have and cannot control. This is made clear because of the next point I'm going to make, that of opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is an economics term that is defined as the loss of other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. For example, let's assume you have $100. You can either use this $100 to purchase a brand new Lego set, or you can invest this $100 in a savings account that produces interest. Basically, whichever option you choose will be at the expense of the other opportunity. Thus, the lost or not taken opportunity is the opportunity cost. So if you choose to buy the Lego set, then the opportunity cost is the interest you would have earned if you had invested that money in a savings account. Inversely, choosing to invest the money would result in you missing out in the fun you would have had playing with the Lego set. So the fun is the opportunity cost in that instance. This is usually measured in terms of monetary loss, as things like fun are difficult to quantify as they are subjective. So let us examine the opportunity cost of renting a house versus buying that same house. Let us use our example that we've developed before. As discussed before, renting the property will cost you $1,329,400, while buying will set you back $2,225,460. The simple calculation of the opportunity cost will be the difference between these two amounts, which would be $896,060. This, however, ignores the potential investment returns you could have been making if you had not purchased the house. So let us assume that you have $200,000 saved up and you decide to rent a house instead of buy a house. This means on a monthly basis, you will spend $3,400 to rent a house instead of the $4,797 you would spend if you were buying the house, which means you'll be spending $1,397 less per month to rent the house. Let us now assume that you place the deposit and the savings from renting instead of buying towards a very moderate investment that earns just 5% per annum. There are many very safe investments that earn more than this, but let us assume this for the sake of being prudent. After 30 years of doing this, you will have $2,056,214.18, meaning after 30 years of renting, you will be able to purchase two $1 million houses. To be fair, there are also financial and non-financial opportunity costs that you will incur by not purchasing, including property value appreciation, access to capital saved, conversion of a major expense, and so on. I will touch on these in more detail when we get to the benefits of purchasing over renting and compare the opportunity costs of not purchasing. We will also do a comparison of the two then. With that said, let us address the fact that value appreciation of the house will still not make it make financial sense. I know that there are some who will argue that purchasing a property for more a month than you would rent that house is still better because the house value will appreciate over time. Let us examine this claim. Since 1992, house values have increased on average by 7.2% per year. If the same occurs over the next 30 years, the $1 million house that we have purchased will increase from value to $3,160,000. Now that's a really great increase in value if the trend continues. But let us not forget how much you've had to pay in order to get this value. From before, you would have had to contribute $2,225,460, meaning the actual benefit of this venture will be $934,540. As we discovered earlier, you would have made twice this much if you simply just invested the deposit and the excess from renting. So even though there's benefits from the potential appreciation of value of the property, it still will not make this decision make financial sense. Just being a little wiser with your funds will leave you better off financially. This problem is compounded by the next problem: the uncertainty of the interest rate. The thing that dictates how much you'll be repaying to the bank in mortgage payments is what is called in New Zealand the official cash rate, or the OCR. This is set by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand and will be adjusted by the Reserve Bank in order to steer the economy in a direction that aligns with their policy at the time. For example, if inflation is too high, they may increase the interest rate in order to reduce inflation. Or if they want to stimulate economic growth, they may lower the rate. I'm not going to go into the detail of this because it's not the point of this video, but the point is there will be fluctuations in the amount that you pay depending on the current government's policy that will change from time to time. Over the past 25 years, the OCR has fluctuated, hitting a high in 2007 of 8.25% and lowest of 0.25% in 2020. Right now, at time of recording, the interest rate was currently sitting at 3.5%, and there is an expectation that this will go down during the year. The important thing to note is that the OCR is the rate that the bank borrows money from the central bank, so the rate that they will charge you for borrowing from them will be higher. This will vary from bank to bank, depending on a number of factors, from as low as 4.29% to a high of 8.24% at time of recording. Factors that will determine the rate include the bank you go to, the amount of deposit that you have, whether or not you would like the interest rate to be fixed or variable, how long you would like the interest rate to be fixed for, and so on. Some of these terms might be jargon to you, so let me define them. A fixed interest rate is an interest rate that won't change when the OCR fluctuates. These can be fixed for a period of up to 5 years, when after the fixed period is completed, you will need to negotiate with the bank a new fixed rate or move to the floating rate. The floating rate is a rate that will fluctuate depending on the OCR rate. So every time the OCR goes down, your repayments will reduce, but every time they go up, your repayments will go up as well. The point I'm trying to make is that there is uncertainty around the future of how much you will be paying in mortgage costs. As much as this can be fixed, it can only be fixed for a period of 5 years at a time. Over a 30-year period, you will increase or reduce how much you pay at least 6 times. If your rate is floating, this can fluctuate as much as the Reserve Bank decides it will. Uncertainty naturally leads to anxiety, especially when you have little control of an increment of an expense, especially when you're locked into a process for 30 years. The only way to exit out of the commitment is to sell the property, which will come with its own set of complications, which I'll touch on in a minute. Renting, on the other hand, offers more certainty around your obligation. The rental will also only increase upwards every year in the form of an annual rental increase. This, however, can be negotiated with the landlord a lot easier, and if you cannot agree on the rental amount, you always have the option of exiting the agreement with as little as a 30-day notice and find somewhere else to live that offers a rental charge that you are happy with. It also offers you a level of flexibility that buying cannot, which takes me to the 7th downside of buying over renting, which is being tied in a liability for 30 years. 30 years is a long time. People who started their mortgage journey in 1995 are only finishing it this year. 30 years ago, there was no smartphone, no social media, no streaming services, and no online shopping. Also, if you are to start your mortgage journey now, you will be obligation-free in 2055. There are strategies you can use to reduce this period, but for the long and short of it, you'll be stuck in the obligation for a long time unless you decide to sell your property, which is not always easy. Having an obligation for this long is concerning because life is unpredictable. The hope is, of course, that everything goes to plan, but there's no guarantee that you will have a job or be healthy enough to work, or that life takes a turn that you were not prepared for. So being tied down for this long just increases your chances of something going wrong, which makes keeping up with the obligation that more harder. Of course, things such as insurance can be taken to hedge against these uncertainties, but this introduces a further cost that you have to deal with for doing something that is already more expensive to do. Not only that, but this will reduce your flexibility. In this fast-paced world, the ability to make faster decisions is an asset. Being able to pivot and change direction when your current direction is no longer working for you can not only save you money, but also increase your net worth. Buying poses a problem in this regard, as it may not allow you to move when you might need to. With the way the world has become transient, new opportunities for work and life may crop up in different parts of the country or the world. And being tied on a very long obligation might make a moving decision more difficult. Your only options at this point would be to try and sell the property and hope to get similar or more value than you purchased it for, or become a landlord. Renting offers you the flexibility of being able to move with very little or no effort and in a very short space of time. The ability to make such decisions with a lot more flexibility will allow you to take advantages of some of these opportunities that may crop up. So if you're a nomad, this will fit very well in your lifestyle. This is made more complicated with the difficulty to exit. According to some websites, the full process of selling your house can take about 3 to 4 months. Some may wait longer than this in the hopes of making more or finding a buyer willing to pay what they're asking for. For a quick sale and with some pressure from real estate agents, some sellers end up selling their property for less than they'd have liked to get for it. On top of that, there are costs associated with selling a house, including real estate agency commissions, marketing expenses, legal fees, and potential maintenance and improvement costs. These are the costs that you will have to incur in order to exit out of the transaction. Exiting a rental transaction, on the other hand, is very simple, takes a lot less time, and the timing is certain. If done correctly, there should be no extra cost outside of your monthly rental, which can be exited out of in 30 days in most cases. Some may argue this point and say there is an alternative, that of being a landlord. This is also not always a bed of roses. Being a landlord means that you're probably receiving less from your tenant than you're paying into the bank. You still have to deal with the maintenance of the property, as this is not the responsibility of the tenant, and you have the added problem of dealing with people, which can be a good experience, but there's also the possibility that it will be a bad experience. Not to mention that while you're doing all these things, you will need to buy another house or start renting because you do need to live somewhere. So as much as this is an option, it is probably not the easiest option. For the sake of having a holistic view, let us assume that you would like to purchase a house for the same amount that you would rent the house on a monthly basis. What would that look like? So for you to pay $3,400 per month for a mortgage with a 5% deposit, the value of the house you can buy will be about $600,000. While with a 20% deposit, you'll be able to buy a house worth $710,000. Either way, one thing is clear. You will have to lower your standard of living to buy. For some, their lifestyle is very important. For some still, the size of the house is not even a luxury thing, but it is a necessity. Some people have large families, and downgrading the size of their house in order to own the property is not an option. So, in essence, for this transaction to make financial sense, you have to downsize or perhaps move to a less desirable house, or if you're lucky, find the unicorn. The unicorn is the house that is perfectly located, the perfect size, while being very cheap, 30 to 40% cheaper than it would normally be. Is this possible? Definitely. But I wouldn't hold my breath. There is a saying that goes, if something is too good to be true, it probably is. I have painted a very bleak image of what it's like to buy a house. The honest truth is that for most people, this dream is unattainable. My hope is not to discourage you, but for people to understand what they will potentially be getting themselves into when they do decide to purchase a house. Buying a house is no longer as easy as it used to be back in the day. The hope is also to give you some reasons why you should look past all this doom and gloom and still buy a house anyway. There are so many good reasons beyond the dollars and cents that make buying a house still worth it and worth the struggle. Let's talk about those reasons. Let's start with not having to move at the pleasure of the landlord. There are few things that I hate in this world more than moving. I would rather eat my own shoes. This is the only reason this one's at the top of the list for me. What is worse than moving, however, is being forced to move. As much as you have the right to move from the house with a 30-day notice, the landlord has the right to remove you with the same 30-day notice. So if the owner decides that they want to move back into the property, or they would like to sell the property, or they just don't want you inside that property anymore, they can issue you with a notice and you will have to move out at the end of that period. The thing with renting is that this will always be an issue and it will always be hanging over your head. You will have to move sooner or later, either because you have been forced to or voluntarily when you find a better deal or don't like the house that you're currently in anymore. What this has meant for us is that we always have to buy generic furniture that will potentially work in any location because we have no idea what the next house is going to look like. We are also very aware that some of the furniture we have will not work in the new location, so we might have to sell it or give it away and get new furniture that works for the new house. There are also costs associated with moving, including the mover who will assist to get the stuff to the new house, and also the danger of furniture getting damaged when you move from place to place, meaning that I will have to change my furniture more often than I would like to. I have been a nomad for most of my life. From when I was a child until now, I can remember moving houses a total of 23 times, which means on average, I moved every 18 months to a new house. I am probably at the age where I would like things to be more predictable and not have to pack up everything I own and move to a new location. I've enjoyed the nomad life, and I think I would like things to be a bit more different now. This leads me to my second point: the permanence and certainty of property. The permanency and certainty of property is probably the reason property has remained as the leading form of investment for most people for the past several centuries. The dynamic has been changing of late with how easy it has become to trade on the stock exchange and how difficult it has become to own property. The certainty of property has remained strong because we have seen how things like policy or government change can crash stock markets, and property value fluctuations have remained fairly consistent. So property ownership can be seen as not a short game investment, but rather an investment that provides certainty. It may not provide great returns or have the growth percentage of the S&P 500, but it will always hold some value. The permanent is not only financial, but physical. There's a saying that goes, you can always come home, which is only possible when there's a home to speak of. Every time I move, I find that there's a period of time that it takes for a house to turn into a home. A house is a place that you live and it keeps you safe from the elements, and there is food and a warm bed. A home is a place where you have a favorite spot. You know the best places to hide when playing hide and seek, and you know the spots to see the best sunsets. There is a warm and comfort that comes with having a home. You know exactly where your keys stay, and you know exactly where your favorite mug is. And the thing that allows for a house to become a home is time. The frustration with renting is that you have to go through this process over and over again. And every time you move to a new house, everything is foreign. You have to learn again where your mug stays and find a new favorite spot. Even when you find a long term rental and you stay there for several years, there is still that thing at the back of your head that this is not really home. Yeah, I'm very comfortable here, but I might be asked to move at any time. And all the memories that you have built in this house will be gone, and you have to build new memories again. This is one of the things I appreciate about property ownership. You know what else I appreciate? Value appreciation of the property. We have already looked at this in a previous point where I was explaining how the value appreciation of the house will not make the purchasing proposition make financial sense. Even though this is the case, we cannot ignore that this is still a benefit. If you had $1 million today and invested it and got $3,160 back after 30 years, you would have earned a compounded interest of 3.91%. This is better than most savings accounts that you get. Can you potentially get more from other forms of investments? Probably. Most of those investments will have a lot more risk associated with them than property does. What this means for me is in a balanced investment portfolio comprising low and high risk investments with differing returns, property ownership can be included as part of my investment strategy. This cannot be my only investment, but for the sake of bringing down my whole investment portfolio, it can work as a very good tool of reducing my risk. I think it is important that I also draw the distinction here that I'm not speaking of property as an investment property, but property as an owner occupied investment. Investment property is a type of property investment where you do not live in the property in question, but you are renting it out or you have purchased it with the hope of selling it later for a higher price. This form of property investment will have to be investigated separately as the variables will be different from what I am talking about. Another really cool financial benefit of property ownership is conversion of a large expense. On average in New Zealand, most people use 22% of their total income on rentals. This can vary largely, with some low income households using as high as 40% of their income on rentals. Rental, usually for most people, is the largest singular expense on their budget. This is also an expense that is unavoidable because we have to live somewhere. So the ability to change this unavoidable expense into an asset is one of the major benefits of buying over renting. On average, to the 30-year period of the mortgage, depending on other variables, about 40% of all your payments will be converted into equity. Equity is the portion of the mortgage payment which is going towards settling the actual debt with the bank and not interest. Thus, all things being equal, this portion can be recovered. What this does is it converts a portion of one of your major expenses into an asset. And not only has a major expense been converted into an asset, you can gain access to the capital of the loan if needed. Some banks offer products that allow you to access the equity portion of your loan when needed. What this means is that you have access to often a lower interest loan than you would have paid if you were taking out a traditional loan, which offers more flexibility and a longer repayment period. This means that you can even start paying extra for your home loan because every cent that you contribute over and above your normal mortgage payments goes directly towards settling your equity. And these are funds that you can access anytime if there's a need to do so. This will reduce your loan repayment period and reduce the interest that you'll have to pay to settle the debt. So this can become your own little piggy bank that you can keep your cash in, and it will do wonders towards reducing your liability. If you structure this well, making sure that a portion of your income goes towards this on a monthly basis, it can really work well. This brings me to my next financial benefit, which is forced savings. I put this in inverted commas because you have to understand that these are not savings in the traditional sense, but they are savings nonetheless. I'm sure we can all admit that saving is difficult, but we all know that we need to be saving. Saving towards holiday, big purchases, or the unexpected. I'm not going to get into the detail of this, but budgeting will be your best friend if you're going to do this. And part of budgeting is making sure that you have an emergency fund in place, have investments going, and know exactly how much you can make in extra payments towards your mortgage without compromising the payment of your bills. As the equity in your home builds, you would have, in essence, built another pool of cash that you can gain access to when needed. There might be an emergency that occurs that requires a lot of cash or a business opportunity that you will now be able to take advantage of. These are all things that you won't have if you're renting, and your only option would be to borrow short-term loans that come with more interest and shorter payment periods. Saving is also difficult for a number of people. Some lack the discipline to save long-term or the patience. So being forced to save is great because you know that the thing that you had to pay for anyway is creating a forced savings account. The next benefit is one which is true in New Zealand and might not be true for a number of other countries around the world. No capital gains taxes. In New Zealand, there are no taxes levied on capital gains. This has been an issue of contention for a number of years now, and is one that is being debated in Parliament for some time. So I'm not sure how long this will remain the case, but currently there are no capital gains taxes here. Meaning when your property appreciates in value, you will not have to pay any capital gains on the extra value gained on the value of the building. This is very beneficial in this country that has shown a tendency for house values to increase over time. Having to worry about further taxes would make the housing market less desirable, but currently this lies as a benefit for the house buyer when they decide to sell. Speaking of selling, let me speak about another benefit of house ownership that I have previously mentioned as a drawback: difficulty of disposal. Now, I know this can be a problem and a reason why some won't enter the housing market, but I like to think of this as a benefit as well. Having the flexibility to sell your house with short notice can be a good thing. It may allow you to take advantage of some opportunities that may crop up. Inversely, not being able to do so can be beneficial, as it may save you from some potential opportunities that end up going belly up. The thing about the future is that it's unpredictable, and the best way to see if something has the potential of going well or not is to take time to fully understand it. As much as selling your house may take time for you to take advantage of this opportunity, this may allow you some much needed time to think through what you're about to do and not make rash decisions. You are, after all, disposing of a major asset that you have in order to enter into a potentially risky transaction, and you may find after more study that this opportunity is not a great one. As a risk-averse person, I see this as being a good thing, and perhaps things that give you short notice to get involved might not be for me. There is also a good chance that those things are scams, and I'm not willing to risk such a large asset on that. Moving from the financial benefits, let's look at some non-financial benefits. Customization of the house. Customization is always great because it allows you to have the house exactly how you want it and have spaces that work for your specific life situation. If you're building a brand new house from scratch, you can customize all the spaces to exactly how you want them. If you're buying an already built house, you can also do the same over time by adding or removing spaces as time goes. Of course, this will have a price tag attached to it, but it is good to know that I can have the exact amount of bedrooms that I need and a dedicated office space that fits my life. You should, of course, not over-customize a house. As much as you're enjoying the space, it must not be something that no one else can enjoy besides you. There is always a potential that you'll have to sell the house, and even if you never do, you will not live in this house forever. If you love hosting guests, you can have spaces that work well with lots of people in your house. If you're into technology, you can customize your house to have a lot more automations and technology. Having these customizations in a rental is possible, but you will either need to get permission from the owner, and at times you will have to return the house to how it was when you took occupation of the house. Let's finish off with one more benefit of house ownership over renting: fixing things at your convenience. This has been something that has affected me a couple of times. Something in the house breaks, which is a responsibility of the landlord to fix, and they take their time to fix it. This is especially problematic if this is something that you really need to work, like the heat pump in the middle of winter or the shower. Contractually, they have to respond and start the process to get everything fixed in a certain period of time, but this comes with assessor seeing the problem, providing quotes to the owner accepting the quotes, and then work finally being done. This can take a while, which can be made worse by people taking their time to respond to requests. When you own the house, you can act with a lot more urgency about you being directly affected by this. It does help if you're putting aside an amount for maintenance every month, so when issues arise, you already have funds waiting to deal with the problem. So, which is better, to buy a house or to rent a house? Honestly, this will depend on your life situation, what your current life goals are, and what you have going on around you. Some people are willing to pay the premium you'll have to pay in order to own a house and have that peace of mind. My goal was to give you my perspective in my journey on deciding whether or not to buy a house. And as you might have picked up, I've been convinced it is probably the best thing for me at this stage in life that I am right now. So there are many reasons why you shouldn't buy a house. There's many reasons why no one should. But the reasons why you should seem to have won me over. I best start saving for that crazy deposit. What do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts about renting versus buying in the comments, or any other topics you'd like me to dig into and discuss. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Peace.